if you go and you sort of try and do like the pro con list of like who is Bitcoin helping, it's not like so overwhelmingly positive for like it's helping like normal people, and it's relatively positive for like, well, it's kind of helping like regimes. So I have two, maybe three projects right now, depending on how you count. One is Wyn.fi, WYN. And this is a new lending platform. You know, everything in the universe is like based on hash functions existing.
Right. Yep.
And as far as we can tell, for like SHA-256, you cannot find a girlfriend.
Yeah, that's right. No girlfriend.
Even if you had a quantum computer, you're going to be a bachelor.
No. You put the girlfriend into the hash function.
You'll never find her again.
Back out of the hash function.
So obviously, we have to know, where are we going to be at next year for the 4th annual Rubin Review?
My gut is telling me that like above like we're still overpriced.
What?
Yeah. And that
okay,
like
so this is bad. Hola, ¿qué tal? Bienvenidos a Miami. Estamos aquí con el podcast Hell Money. Soy Rodomor, Casey de Rodomor. Y estamos con Erin de Wing de Rojo. Y mi amigo Jeremy Rubin. Increíble. That's right. We're back in.
I mean, what's hell money in Spanish? You just did like a sort of Spanish accent.
Moneda del infierno.
Oh, that's good.
All right.
That's good.
That's right. Yeah, we're back in Miami at an undisclosed location, high above the city streets of Miami.
Mm-hmm.
I'm here as always with Aaron Redwing, my co-host. I'm the other co-host. None of us is the main host. We're just both co-hosts.
Mm-hmm. I think you already said that in Spanish.
Did I? I don't know.
No.
Maybe not in so many words. And then, of course, since it's the annual Miami episode, we're here with Jeremy Rubin.
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for having me on.
That's good.
Thank you for being here, Jeremy. With
coming
us.
on the podcast.
Yeah. This is, I mean, I think 3 episodes that makes you our most recurring guest at
That's
this point, right?
Yep.
I can't think of who else. Like Matt Wraith has been on twice.
Mm-hmm.
There's definitely people who've been on twice. I think you really take the cake.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to like put it on a t-shirt.
Yeah, exactly.
And this is the first established How Many podcast tradition, the annual Jeremy Rubin episode.
Okay, so we were just talking about this before, that December comes and we have sort of our like Casey Core and Aaron Core episodes, which is we have the Rubin annual review, which is like for the people that want Casey and Jeremy to like talk about the details of some like technical nerd shit. They get that. And that's like a fan favorite episode. Like there are people who are like, oh, the Rubin episodes are my favorite episodes. And then always after the Rubin episode is the astrology year in review episode.
I think it's good that you like do it in that order, kind of like brushing your teeth after eating a burrito.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, right.
Exactly. So it's like you get the full spectrum of hell money in December. But I don't know, we should have it like people have Vlogmas, you know what I mean? When they vlog every day of December.
They have
going
what?
up Vlogmas. It's like a
Vlogmas.
It's
okay.
a vlogger tradition where every day in December you vlog leading up to Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
So we kind of have that, but like
Once every
whatever our version of that
2
would
weeks, you know.
Yeah.
Yep.
Hell Money podcast, Christmas in Hell.
Yep.
And I think 2021 I did like my like advent calendar, and I did like 50,000 words in like blog posts over the month of Christmas.
Really?
Jeremy, yeah, did you do that just once, or did you do that a couple years in a row?
I did it just once.
Yeah.
And
it
was
felt like a couple years in a row.
Yeah, because like people would reread it and they'd be like, "Oh, I missed this the first time."
So basically, it was like every day you would drop some like very technical blog post.
Yeah,
about
that was
Bitcoin.
the idea.
Yeah.
And it was
Mostly very inscrutable stuff.
Yeah, it was
really
fun.
hard to scrut.
Yeah, I definitely had people challenged to scrut it over the years, but I think that there was a certain point where you just get into like flow state for like the writing, and you're like, it doesn't matter if it's like good or bad, it like has to go out. And I'm glad that I did it in like 2021 because it was like kind of pre-AI. And like post-AI, it'd be very, not that it'd be easy to have like good posts, but like it's definitely very attainable to be like give me a post.
AI slop.
Yeah, AI slop posted. But I like worked my ass off for like the whole month, like getting, like I'd like make the post and I'd be trying to get it by like 10 a.m. And then I'd like immediately start trying to get the next one like ready and trying to get ahead. And I was never ahead after the first couple days.
Yeah, because you can't because I actually I did like NaNoWriMo, November novel writing.
Yeah,
so I
yeah.
just did that, but I did 30,000 words.
Can I read your novel?
Yeah, you can read my novel. But I did 30,000 words, which is 1,000 words a day. But 50,000 is like 1667 words a day, right?
It's both easier and harder because some of it was like code.
Yeah,
and it maybe was code that
the
I've been
word
like working on.
is like this long. It's like foo in whatever.
Yeah.
Like,
Wow,
you get to
good,
cheat.
Aaron. You know the
Uh-huh.
lingo. Yeah,
Yeah.
you can basically program.
I can basically program. But then, but it's harder because then you had to edit it. Like you had to publish it.
Yeah, and
right?
also like a paragraph of like prose can be like good or bad, but like code has to compile.
Yeah.
So sometimes it can take a lot longer because like for every word you have to spend like a bit of time making sure it works correctly.
I like that you did that. One of the questions I wanted to ask you about was digital hygiene. Like, because one of the things I've noticed, so we do this episode every year. It's sort of like an annual review. One of the things that I've noticed in 2025 is like the brain ratification of everyone in Bitcoin, because Twitter has just like made it so that no one can lock in, like they're just too distracted. They're too focused on like BIP 444 stuff or like drama or whatever. And I'm curious, like, do you have, like, Casey and I both deleted X from our phones this year. And I feel like that's been a major improvement to my lifestyle. Do you have like rules for yourself when it comes to engaging with the like hedonistic treadmill of digital reality? Or do you just kind of like blast it and see what happens?
I think that I would be a liar if I said I don't really like look at what's going on Twitter.
Duh. Yeah, I still look, obviously.
But I think I just haven't really been that called to the debates and stuff. And I think I forget like what one of the topics was, but it was a little while ago. And I basically told people like at conferences, like if you bring up this topic, I'm just going to leave. And it's not because like I don't like you or care, but I just like don't really care to spend any of my life on this topic. So if you bring it up, I have no interest in the conversation. And I also don't think that people should really be talking about it. It seems like a waste of everyone's like mental space. So I think that
I want to ask what those topics are.
I
want to
honestly,
finish this
but
episode.
he'll walk out.
Honestly, I pushed it out of my head so far. Like
You don't even remember.
I don't
what
even
it was.
remember. I think it was like, I think the most recent one was like the it wasn't like the current iteration of it because it was like maybe back in May or something, but I think it was like the op return stuff was just starting to become a thing. And I just said, look, like I am doing like much more interesting things, and it's just not how I like want to spend any of my mental capacity. So I think that just sort of and maybe the right way to self-deprecatingly describe it is like I've eaten so many sweets and then I'm saying like, oh, I can't have any more, rather than being like, oh, I just don't touch the stuff. It's like, yeah, I've just like I've done the cycles of people caring about random stuff, and I'm just like, I don't really have any more appetite for it at this point.
So yours is more topic based rather than like the medium itself. It's like, I don't want to engage with this topic, or like this is a waste of my time. I mean, we talked about this, I don't remember when, but we talked about this a lot in terms of Bitcoin Core, right? Where it's like the best way to attack Bitcoin Core would be to just like derail the devs on like meaningless, like endless
AIPR.
Yeah. And I think that's also in like, and this is maybe good advice for some people and bad advice for others, but in deciding to like build a company, building, on top of Bitcoin Core, one of the things that I wanted to get away from was really having to convince anyone of what I was doing. And not for like the negative reason of like, I'm so self-justified that like I don't need any input or I don't want any of that, but it's really distracting. And especially like you just get into these like pointless debates. I was like, you know what? I want to like build an obscurity for a little bit and just like build what I think is my contribution, and ignore everything else that I'm not really like interested in or don't think is relevant, and not have to be like figuring out how to fund it. So that's part of why I started a company, and then we've kind of just been doing that. And I have enough to chew on in my company. I don't need like more problems from the internet.
It's a good segue. You said something kind of interesting before we started recording, which is that this like current improvement cycle of Bitcoin, that without it, Bitcoin will sort of revert to the financial mean. What did you mean by that?
Yeah, so I think that when when you think about like what Bitcoin is, like fundamentally, it's an empowerment tool for like civilians. That's sort of like the pitch. And it is taking away power from the state, while still allowing the state to have its like rational interests protected in the monetary system. So any state that's a good state should be able to look at Bitcoin and say, this seems an acceptable money system for us. And any individual should be able to say, and great, now we're going to have our rights enshrined. And that's sort of like the core value prop for Bitcoin. As Bitcoin has developed from a social side, it has actually, and maybe this is topical as well with Mike Brock's like, I guess, flame out, which I haven't read. I've just heard about
we
it
actually just heard about it on the subspace an hour ago.
Yeah,
which if you're not on the How Many Subscriber space, you really should be.
It was really
so
a banger today, gotta say.
It was a true banger. So
like,
I just read
comment,
it.
and subscribe. Subscribe to us on Twitter.
Yeah.
Anyways, as you were saying,
yeah.
Well, I've not read it, so you can tell me if I'm wrong. But I read a snippet. Is like, if you go and you sort of try and do like the pro con list of like who is Bitcoin helping, it's not like so overwhelmingly positive for like it's helping like normal people, and it's relatively positive for like, well, it's kind of helping like regimes. And you can see that where it's like right now there's millions of Bitcoin that are on like centralized platforms, and that's usually kind of like a one-way graph. Like that number goes up, and it's pretty hard for them to like permanently go off those platforms. I mean, obviously you could like remove your Bitcoin from Coinbase if you wanted to, and Coinbase is like the number one provider in this regard. But does it actually make sense to? Like, their security is better than yours is. You have access to other assets that you might want. So it sort of, things get like siphoned up into these centralized platforms. Governments now have these like big treasuries that they're doing. And also you see like Iranian regime doing like Bitcoin mining, and we don't really know the true number there, but maybe somewhere between like 5 to 15% of the network hash rate maybe being Iran. And they're using that as a way to take you can kind of call them like sovereign wealth assets, like the oil in the ground or other energy resources, and then use them for like a private gain, or for gain that's not able to be sanctioned in the way that like other money might be sanctioned. And whether or not you agree with like the philosophy of like sanctions, I would hope we can largely agree that like Iran does bad things. Like, they're like the number one sponsor of terrorism.
Number one bad doer. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so like they're doing bad stuff.
North Korea does bad, but they're kind of self-contained. They're just chilling.
They also do bad, but they don't sponsor like the global terrorism in the same way. They're like very happy, maybe not very happy, but like they're happy to control their own population largely. Whereas like Iran is more like has auspices for like a greater, like caliphate, state, and they sponsor a lot of nefarious stuff. And that's bad. And like if Bitcoin is empowering that in any degree, that's also bad. And so I'm not like anti Bitcoin. Obviously I'm pro Bitcoin, but when I look at it, I'm like, oh wow, if we continue with what we have available, we'll just keep going down this route of people who are finding use for Bitcoin using it to good effect for themselves. And if people who can't find the ability to use Bitcoin, they're not going to use it. So Bitcoin will increasingly go down this track of being like good for like already powerful entities and like not really helpful for anyone else. And I think that the current wave of like technological improvements that we're working on, they maybe add some points in the bucket of Bitcoin can empower the everyman. And that I think is a very positive direction, because Bitcoin still does have as a concept what we thought was going to happen at this point, like 15 years ago. It still could happen. It's just like it takes technology to get there, and we clearly do not have the tools today for that to play out if we just let it play out. But if we develop these new tools, we might be able to turn that tide and make Bitcoin primarily something that's helpful to like people at large.
And what do you think what are the things that you think are missing?
So I think that there is first and foremost a sense of scale. And Bitcoin just does not support people at scale. And I've been like for as long as it's been like sort of a narrative of like, oh, this is going to do cool things, I've been like a critic of Lightning, where it like, yeah, it's cool that you could do these like micro payments, but it isn't solving you getting paid, because in order for you to get paid, for your job, your employer has to lock up some multiple of your salary, or you have to spend all your money regularly in order to receive new money in. So it doesn't really work as like a savings technology at all. So it's like that's kind of broken. And that was sort of for a while like our best bet at getting scale for Bitcoin was something that like just from a really like high level view doesn't make any sense. Like where's the money if you're earning money? If you're creating new value, there's not an easy way for that value to come in through Lightning. It's only sort of good for like high trade things where you're in and out. And for somebody working and like saving their money, that's not a natural alignment. But business to business, it's a different situation. And also sort of like the privacy implications is like if we're talking about people who are in countries where the things that you do today may get you killed in a year or two. And these might be like normal things that you would be like not have a second thought about, but then they can become politically disfavorable and you can run into big trouble. Like Bitcoin is not private enough to want to use it that way. And then also when you look at self-custody, I think that that's probably the area where we've seen like the biggest innovations, where like Bitcoin of like 10 years ago, I remember I was like helping a client who had like 7,000 Bitcoin. And he had a very specific set of constraints. So I'm sure somebody will go back and tell me this is absolutely the wrong thing. I went through all of the like at the time best possible options, and I ended up doing like Shamir's secret shares because he wanted a very strong narrative around how his family would get control of the coins if he died. And it was like, okay, at the time, this is like the safest way to do it and meet all of the other sort of check boxes that he wanted. But it was like there's no off the shelf software. I had to write software to do it. Do all the testing and then like walk them through a custom playbook. I think
that's what I did at Layer 1.
Yeah,
our Grin holdings is I wrote my own shitty Shamir secret sharing setup with like instructions and like shards and forced everybody to like go through it and like biting my finger watching them.
Yeah,
go
well,
through the
it
playbook
actually
that I had
has
written.
good properties because if you fuck it up, let's say for an inheritance thing, okay, the drawback is that like the worst case failure would essentially be that one shard gives you the whole wallet. But if the one shard is like, your family member, it's still a recoverable path. And on chain, you're using the most default.
Isn't the worst case that you lose shards and then you're fucked? Like, isn't that the worst case?
Yes, that's also bad, but like you can statically test that like given every combination of shards, you're recoverable.
Right. Yep.
So like you can at least know that like, okay, I will get the key back. It could also so like yes, you can lose them. I just meant like without any like data loss. Like the worst case if you're using Shamir secret sharing is you're using all standard on-chain stuff. So if you're comparing to what if I just did the simple on-chain versus if I did the Shamir secret sharing, it's like the worst on-chain case is that like somebody gets access without getting full access for approval from everyone. But if you do like, oh, we're going to do like a custom like multi-sig with like timeouts and things like that, and you do make a small bug, it could be observable on chain because this is pre-Taproot. Like you do one spend with one of the, let's say you have a 2 of 2 top level key, and then you have like another path that has like, somebody could be like, oh, look at this address. Now we know this address. And we can figure out that there's a bug in this like multi-sig, failover, and we're actually able to just like steal all the money right away. So for a lot of reasons, like custom scripts, especially even today, custom scripts are a little bit like dodgy. But especially at the time, it was like, okay, the best option for this guy was to just have Shamir secret sharing. And like, it was a little bit of a process and it wasn't like off the shelf use a tool. The point that I was going to make connecting it back is like nowadays, probably in terms of like the biggest improvement, self-custody has really dramatically improved. But it's still not at the level that it's easy to do or ubiquitous. And the disadvantages to self-custody have sort of stayed relatively the same. In terms of like, yeah, if you mess up, that's it. And there aren't any like programmatic control wallets in any sort of popular use. And so all of the access patterns are more or less all or nothing. Or roll your own for like what the difference is between your cold and other things. And so on the balance, I don't think we've like made a dramatic improvement for self-custody in a way that would be like meaningful to the end user who would say, well, I want to be able to access this much this way and this other much this way. And then as soon as you receive any new coins, your whole setup is like bust. And so that sort of connects to the next point, which is across all of these categories, the way to make an impact is to improve the technology of Bitcoin fundamentally. And without that improvement, because the scalability, the privacy, the self-custody, and there are other things that you can get into as well, like decentralization and censorship, all these other properties people care about. They're not that good, and I just don't see anything that's actually making a huge, tangible improvement that has been sort of universally adopted in the same way that like Lightning was adopted as like this is going to make Bitcoin better. Because Lightning, at the time that Lightning was picked up, it had like the full-throated support of like most of like Bitcoin Core, and then the full-throated support of like the Lightning community. And now I think we have like covenants as like one way to improve stuff. And then it's like the covenant pilled people, and then people who are like, I don't get why anyone would want this. And then there's now forming, and related to the covenant, usually mostly aligned with the covenant people, the roll ups and like layer twos, and we can talk more about that. And there's still sort of a lot of ambivalence of like, are these layer two roll ups with their op returns like good or bad for Bitcoin, and is this the way that it should move forward? Fortunately, like Lightning, actually maybe similar-ish to Lightning, is that these don't necessarily require changes to Bitcoin, which is where I'm actually optimistic. Is that maybe we've figured out a powerful enough set of primitives to get around in a meaningful way some of these technology problems. The last note that I'll make before ending my rant on this subject and taking a question or two is that if you made me like the PM of the project Bitcoin and you said you have a goal of like achieving some of these things within the next 2 years, would I put my money on the layer 2 stuff, or would I put my money on like getting covenant shipped? I would put my money on getting covenant shipped, because it's sort of like the obvious like step to improve things. Whereas the layer 2 stuff, I think, even though it has like insane potential, even in a world where there are covenants, I think it's still like a little bit more on the research and development side than it is on the tried and true tested things that people can understand and like rely on at scale. It'll get there, and that's part of what I work on as well. But like, it's just not quite locked into that level yet.
Did you have a question you wanted to ask specifically?
Well, I was going to ask, like when you talk about layer 2 stuff, I'm like pretty checked out of the layer 2 space. I guess the thing that seems most interesting to me is garbled locks, which I don't really understand. I'm like, okay, you take the conditions of the layer 2 and you encode it such that if you sign this thing and you violate these conditions, you leak the private key. That's basically the idea. It seems like a pretty magical primitive.
Yeah, it's actually surprisingly simple. And it is magical, but it's surprisingly simple, which is relatively rare in cryptography. Usually it's like, oh, we know how to do this thing, and you're like, great, and then you're like, first
generate 100 kilobytes of inscrutable like circuits or proofs or whatever.
Exactly. And then you have no idea, what this is doing, and it's relying on some like weird hardness assumption, and
that factoring the number 21 is difficult. It relies on that.
Yeah, and then like also they're like, the big thing, I think in terms of like, can you tell?
Modern cryptography relies on it being hard to get a girlfriend. The assumption that it's hard to get a girlfriend.
Exactly.
It is complicated.
It's true for the cryptographers.
Is if you can describe the protocol and it's like immediately, obviously quantum secure, it's usually pretty easy. And garbled circuits, not in how they've like gone.
Should I be calling them garbled circuits or garbled locks?
Okay. So originally I named the thing Delbrag. As
it's a terrible name. I'm glad that
garbled,
somebody took away the naming from you. Like Delbrag. Like, come on,
yeah,
bro.
Garbled backwards.
Be real. Oh, no. No.
And then it got sort of rebranded to Garbled Glocks, which is a much better branding, I think. So grateful for that. And at the time that I like wrote my my like write up on it, I think Liam from Alpin was also like thinking about some of the stuff. But what had happened was I raised money to build this like Bitcoin staking technology, Char network. And I knew a lot about how BitVM worked, just by virtue of like BitVM, in a sense, like there was like all this like weird stuff I was working on, like how to like sign data on the stack using Lamport signatures and what you can do with that and how it lets you do various things. And then like Robin Linus took it and was like, oh, we can actually like make this do like a little computation, and then we can use that at scale to do a big computation. And it got like really exciting. And I was like, okay, I kind of understand how that works. And I like checked out for a bit and I was doing other stuff. And then I was like, oh, and it seems like there's like a really big issue that all of these projects are going to have around like sequencing. So that's why I decided I wanted to work on that problem in particular. It was also something I'd kind of worked on a bit before. And then
sequencing just in the sense of like getting transactions into the main chain in some order.
As in getting transactions into the layer 2 in some order.
Oh, I see. Okay, got it. Yeah.
And then at a certain point, I was like, okay, it's time for me to like hit the books and like really study what's going on with BitVM and like make sure I like know exactly what the latest state of the technology is, so I can build something that's like meaningful. And then I like was like, oh, this is like bad. And I was like, this is not how I would do it. Like, and then I was like, what I would actually do, and this was sort of based on some of the other research I'd been doing about like the functional encryption covenants and some sort of related.
Yeah, the garbled lock stuff reminded me a bit of the functional encryption stuff
sort of
we talked about.
Spiritually, connected. And then I was like, actually, you can get rid of most of the BitVM protocol and just replace it with like one of these garbled circuits. And so then I wrote up a memo on how to do that, and then I started talking to some various people. And then I think someone had sent me like a paper on garbled circuits, like, oh, this is like the state of the art literature. And I was like, this was maybe in November. And I was like, great, I'm going to read that paper. I've never fucking read that paper.
Yeah.
Because it's like hard. It's like, oh, like, it's like, yeah, like this is
the cryptographic hardness assumption is that this paper is hard to read.
Yeah, exactly. So I was like, okay, like I know what the like textbook garbled circuit is. Now let me like understand this like super optimized one that's going to make this practical. And I was like, okay, I have no idea what's going on here. And so then I waited, and then eventually I realized that like the BitVM community at large like hadn't really figured this out separately on their own. And I like searched the Telegram. I'm like, has anybody even like mentioned garbled circuits in the BitVM Telegram? And I was like, no. So like clearly like they just like don't know. So therefore, if I had this idea, I must be right. Because if
Right.
like if they haven't mentioned it, they haven't like ruled it out for some reason. So I was like, okay, I should probably just like publish like a draft paper. I published the draft paper, and then I told Robin Linus at the MIT Bitcoin Expo, and he was like, he looked at me and he was like, I think that you're right, but I really hope that you're wrong, because this makes us have to throw away the last year of work that we've done.
Many such cases, honestly.
And I was like, yeah, I think I'm right. And so really, the way that they work, like quickly, I think is probably what people want to hear. It's actually not that bad. There's like a literature term which is like conditional revelation of secrets, which is a slightly easier thing than garbled circuits. It's a slightly different problem. And what it is I have some function that I want to compute. And if I compute this function, I want to learn a password. That's
Wait, sorry. I just realized that this is the part where I have to turn my brain on. Okay, like we start over.
Yeah, turn your brain on.
Yeah, it's
All right,
getting there.
Brains on.
Okay. So I have a function.
Yep, absolutely.
And the function takes as an input a JSON.
A JSON?
Yeah, JSON.
This is like your mom
arguments.
saying that, are you playing the Nintendo?
Casey hates when you
It's a
say
JSON
a JSON.
object.
No, it doesn't have to be.
I've
a
already
JSON.
gotten this lecture.
I'm just being silly.
Okay.
It's like a byte array. It's
Okay.
some
You
piece
put
of data,
some data in there. Yeah.
It could be whatever. There's a
Stick it in
JSON,
there.
whatever arguments you want to this thing, stick it in there. And then if you put the right JSON in,
Mm-hmm.
then you learn a password.
But what determines what the right JSON is and the wrong JSON?
So this is where the cool technology comes in.
Yep.
Is
Pray, Mr. Babbage, if you put into the machine the wrong JSON, will the right circuits come out?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a lot of things that are like that. Like, if you think about it, like, let's say I have a think of like an encrypted file.
Mm-hmm.
And the file is just a password. Like
Sure.
inside the file is like a password database.
Mm-hmm.
If you put in the password, the encrypted file is technically a function that outputs the list of passwords, right? Like there's
Sure.
sort of and the reason why sometimes it's important to give these like silly examples is because you can then say, well, I have one example of this thing existing somewhere. So there could be more, right? So I know that there are some functions that exist out there where if I put in the right piece of data, I get out a password.
Mm-hmm.
And then you say, well, can I construct another example? And usually in cryptography or in computer science in general, one of the things that you try to do when you're thinking about functions is you try to say, do I know any functions where if I can just do this really simple function, I can combine that function to do any function? And the simplest example of that is a NAND gate.
Mm-hmm.
A NAND gate basically just says I have two inputs, and if it's not and,
Mm-hmm.
and that means that if the two inputs to this function are bools, they're either true or false, and I want it to compute. Basically, if it's false, it outputs true.
Mm-hmm.
If it's false,
Any other
true,
combination, it outputs false.
No, that's
Not and?
it outputs
For NAND, it's like for an and, it's true if both inputs are true.
yeah, I said
Otherwise,
false,
it's
false to true,
Mm-hmm.
and then false, true to true, and then
Mhm.
true, false to true,
That's right.
and then true to false.
Yep.
Mhm.
That's a NAND.
Yep.
And it turns out with a bunch of, like cleverness, you can prove that if you have enough NAND gates, you can compute anything,
Mhm.
which is cool. So what that means is now in terms of thinking about our function, right? We can say, okay, well, we have this thing. We want it to input some piece of data and for it to output either true or false if it's the right piece of data. So we can build that just with NAND gates.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the next thing we can say is, if you gave me this NAND gate, can I reverse engineer it and figure out what the data was?
Mhm.
Usually the answer is yes.
Mm-hmm.
But what if we had a way of not doing that? And then that's what a garbled circuit is. And here we'll just describe the one encrypted one. And then now that we describe one encrypted one, then you can say, oh, and if I did it infinitely, or as big as I needed, this is what you were complaining about earlier. It's always some huge circuit,
Mhm.
but this is the really simplest one. And then you can combine it a bunch of times with a compiler and compile any function you want. And it happens without, necessarily revealing the password along the way, which
Mhm.
is the thing that we want to learn.
Right.
If true, we get a password. And so what you do to make a garbled circuit is you have an input A and an input B, and then you pick for A two random numbers, A0 and A1,
Mhm.
and B0 and B1, and C0 and C1.
Okay.
So you have two inputs and one output.
Mhm.
And C1 corresponds to true, C0 corresponds to false.
Mhm.
And then what you do is you take those random numbers and you hash them. So now you have H of
course.
A0,
Mhm.
H of A1,
Uh-huh.
et cetera, et cetera. And we all know it's hard to go backwards.
Right.
Right? You can't take H of A0 and compute A0. Impossible. Quantum hard, all these things. That's what like Bitcoin mining relies on. That's what, everything in the universe is like based on hash functions existing.
Yep.
And as far as we can tell, for like SHA-256, you cannot find a girlfriend.
Yeah, that's right.
Right.
No girlfriend.
Even if you had a quantum computer,
No.
you're going to be a bachelor.
No.
Yep.
You put the girlfriend into the hash function. You
You'll
can't
never
get the
find her
girlfriend
again.
back out of
Yeah.
the hash function.
Yeah, maybe with
Okay.
current technology, you might be able to figure out what a girl is, but you can't identify one specifically,
Yep.
and certainly not one that's
Yeah.
willing to be with you.
Yep. Well, you've heard it here first. That is the dating advice segment. So, anyways, we've got these two. And then those passwords. That's stuff that we can publish to someone. But then what we do is something kind of special. Is we take the unhashed version A0, and we take, let's say B0, and then we concatenate them together. No opcat needed. Like this is all off chain. And then we hash them again. And then we say, well, this we are going to exclusive OR with C1. Not hash C1, just C1.
Mm-hmm.
And then what that means is, then we publish that, right? So we published the hash of A0, and we published the hash of A1, the hash of B0, the hash of B1, and now we've published the hash of A0 concatenated B0 XORed with C1. So then if I reveal to you what A0 is and what B0 is, you can now take those, put them together. You can verify that those were the hash things that I provided you before, and then you can exclusive OR them with that other thing I got, and the exclusive ORs cancel out, and then you've now learned C1.
Right.
You've learned the password for if you learned this row of the input, and you repeat this process. So then you do A0, B1, B1, A0, and then the one that's tricky is you do A1, B1, and then instead of doing that with C1, you do that with C0.
Wacky. Okay. Uh-huh.
And now we have a very simple function that you have inputs. And if you learn how to encode the input by learning the preimages of these bits, then you can yourself run the function. And then if you run the function, you can learn the password. But you don't learn the password unless you are able to decrypt that final result.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing about the structure of the you learn what the structure of the program is, but you don't learn the password. So you can't like encode a secret into the function. You can only encode a password as the output.
Yep.
I mean, when I say these things, like they're like computer science terminologies for like, can you encode the password directly into the function? For this one, you can. And because it's this NAND gate, now it's just one step to say, well, can you connect one NAND gate to the other? And then you say, well, the output was I learn C1 or I learn C0. And then what if that's one of the inputs to another gate? And then what if that goes into another gate, and then that's the input to even another gate? And so you can connect them together to an arbitrary circuit. You can compute any function. And then at the end of that, you're guaranteed to learn a password. That's a garbled circuit, where it's like this conditional information reveal thing. Garbled circuits has a little bit more complexity. And then what that lets you do is bring that back to Bitcoin, is you can set up a contract where you say, for each bit in my input, I either have to reveal A0 or A1 by a certain deadline. And I do that for each gate. For A0, for B0, all of the inputs, I have to reveal input, but I pre-distributed the circuit. And if I reveal an input that is good, I get C1 as the output. And if it's bad, I get C0. And then I also lock up funds. And those funds say, if you learn C0, then you can steal my money. So if I ever publish data that's bad, then you can steal my money. And that primitive is like insane. And you can use it in different ways. You can come up with better garbled circuits. There's all sorts of things different ways of signing the data. There's all sorts of things you can do. But fundamentally, what this enables is now we have an on-chain protocol where you have to reveal a very small amount of input data that's signed by one party, and then you can have an arbitrarily complicated function on the other end that gets evaluated and punishes the person if they published bad data. And then that is basically similar to what BitVM was doing, but I think the numbers are like it's 1,000 times less data intensive.
Right. And the idea is that you encode the semantics of the L2 into this garbled lock.
Yeah.
Yep. So such that it must be executed faithfully. Otherwise, the person who runs it gets slashed.
Yep.
And they're subject to pretty strict like liveness conditions. Like if you could censor the person from publishing updates to the garbled lock L2 for like long enough, the money would become spendable by anybody's because it has to have a timeout condition.
So the main sort of like trick, there are two tricks for like actually like using it in practice. And one is that you have to have some sort of like system where you have a provable like next action that's supposed to happen. You have a guarantee that like one of the parties has to publish some data by a certain time or they have a problem. And then the other thing is that in the data that you're putting in that on-chain space, you also like encode a transaction that's a pre-signed transaction that somebody can use to spend the money themselves. Right. So you're giving them basically, and then if you don't give a transaction that can be used to spend the money, and that transaction doesn't match like what's supposed to happen as a result of this layer 2 running, then it's invalid. So if the transaction isn't valid, like then like it couldn't work, then you lose your money. So you have to, like, if you reveal your inputs in time, the inputs have to include a valid transaction, and they have to include a proof that that transaction, matched some other system. And then
so each update contains unilateral withdrawal instructions for all participants in the L2?
Just for a single request.
Okay.
Like basically what you'd be saying is like the layer 2, somebody made a request for us to send like, and it maybe works a little bit differently like as it's applied, but just for intuition, somebody made a request to send 10 Bitcoin to this address. Here's a transaction that sends 10 Bitcoin to that address. It's pre-signed. Here's a proof that it's correct. I now publish it by revealing all the bits as things, and then somebody else can now finish that step. And if I revealed the wrong thing, then I would lose 100 Bitcoin. So you have like the locked up Bitcoin that's like your collateral, and you would lose that if you posted an invalid proof. Otherwise, you just get the 10 Bitcoin authorized. And people protocolize this in different ways to like build these Glocks, one with different crypto primitives, which it makes it like, I don't even know what's going on. Or they'll like change the transaction diagram to be like, oh, well, what if we have this transaction with this output, then it's connected to that, and et cetera. It gets more complicated. But the core idea is kind of there, is relatively simple. And then the other sort of big thing is, and this is a general cryptographic technique, is like there are well understood zero knowledge proof systems. And you use those as like a compressor to be like, if you can make a garbled circuit just big enough to verify one of these proofs, then you don't need as much big circuit. So that's the other trick that people do to get the total size of because otherwise I think like with the naive protocol, like the garbled circuits could be like anywhere from like 50 to 500 gigabytes or something per instance. And so that would mean like, which is actually reasonable because you look at like, what does it cost to like get a terabyte drive? It's like $50. So that would just mean like, okay, garbled circuits, V0, maybe if you want one, you're getting a new hard drive for every time that you're bridging millions of dollars. That's like reasonable. But with some of the techniques that people have been developing, the circuits actually get like quite small, like, megabytes. So now they're, able to be ubiquitous. And I'm really bullish on this because this is like arbitrary computation able to happen on Bitcoin. And it's unilateral, sort of, maybe it's not full unilateral withdrawal, but like it is like very provable that you have a withdrawal rate.
I guess the one downside compared to like EVM style smart contracts is that you don't really get guaranteed correct execution. You got like punishable or slashable correct execution.
Yeah, and then you need some sort of like way of actually getting your request met.
Sequencing, getting your...
Yeah. There are some tricks around some of that. And the literature is a little bit scattered across the different designs. But one thing that I'll just say about like the EVM style thing is like, and this is maybe a broader point to get to, but the BitVMs that people are implementing, like they typically are providing an EVM or EVM-like execution environment. So like you do have, when you're on the layer 2, you do have something that like is programmable in that way. And then in terms of the Bitcoin like bridge back operation, it's a little bit more fraught. Absolutely. Couple things on that. One is you can swap in and out. So in theory, you can swap with someone rather than bridging across. Bridging might be expensive. You could maybe swap. The other is kind of the way that it works is like optimistic. And I believe how some of the designs are set up right now is you go to a party and then you say, please pay me the money, and they immediately pay you. And then they get maybe some spread on that. But then they know that they will be able to provably request the withdrawal later. And then they go through this like longer process to withdraw the money. But they're just collecting the receipt that they can withdraw later, if that makes sense.
Right.
And so you sort of separate the concern of like from the end user perspective, it's like you get an immediate withdrawal, but it's not unilateral. It's like you have to go to somebody who's able to bridge out. If you wanted it to be unilateral, it would be, difficult, probably would require like, zero knowledge opcodes on Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are still issues with a lot of that around like data availability and that's where like sequencing comes in, is even if you're zero knowledge, you still need some sort of like data availability. So you even know what the state is of your chain to be able to make the withdrawal request.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of, dragons, I think, in the direction of like fully self-custodial, but these are all the same problems that the EVM chains have of like, can you get all of the chain state for one of these rollups or
Right.
not?
Right.
If you can't, then you can't unilaterally exit anyways. But I'm bullish.
And so it's Liam at Alpen Labs who's mostly working on this?
There's a pretty big research group in Telegram. Like he did a lot of the and I guess maybe relatively in parallel to my work.
When you say big research group on Telegram, you mean like a bunch of like Pepe
no,
PFP
it's like the BitVM builders group, and there's like a lot of like impressive cryptographers in there and people who are like,
are the
doing
BitVM
R&D.
people getting interested in this?
Yeah, the BitVM 3 is fully based on.
Oh,
like,
really?
this
Okay,
stuff.
and so
Yeah.
they're like, oh, damn, we do need to throw away all the shit we wrote.
Yeah. So BitVM 3, I think that they're still auditing and like getting BitVM 2 to like be like production, but BitVM 3 is sort of like the main focus now. And there's been a lot
crazy.
of.
We're at version 3 of an unreleased project.
Yeah. But it's cool. And I think it. Now what's interesting is bridging is like really sexy, but the garbled circuits primitive is like a general purpose thing.
Oh,
So
garbled circuits are sexy too.
Yeah.
Don't sell yourself short.
Thank you. So there's a lot. We've just sort of scratched the surface, is my opinion, and there are a lot of other types of protocol that you can do like all sorts of like wild shit with garbled circuits. Like one, for example, is at block height, so and so, I'm going to publish a proof of what the difference was in hash rates over a long amount of time, and I'm going to post a zero knowledge proof of that, and I'm going to post the proof of like the number, and then based on the number, I'm going to provide a payout to you. And now you can do like a fully on-chain arbitrary properties like hash rate escrow contract. You can do a custodial system with a vault where you can say like, I'm going to submit a request to you for a withdrawal and some set of operators, and you, for my like 1 Bitcoin, you insure it with 2 Bitcoin. And if you don't post a withdrawal request to me by a certain date, like I get those 2 Bitcoin. That sounds pretty good. Like this is something where like you're saying that you're going to post like a valid withdrawal on time. Okay. So then I request a withdrawal and then you have to process it. But you have to process it in accordance with a specific set of vault like preferences. And if you post one where it's an invalid withdrawal, then I get 2 Bitcoin. So it's sort of like a weird vault where like if your hot wallet got hacked it maybe wouldn't be good, but maybe you have like an ultra cold wallet the punishment addresses. And so it's like your hot wallet should work as intended, or your cold wallet is going to get really rich. So that's kind of an interesting primitive as well. And so there's also like things of like BitVM is it's cool because if you can bridge the Bitcoin, then you can do all this stuff in these layer 2s. But there's also a lot more like direct use of BitVM that I think, or not maybe BitVM, but like garbled locks that has been a little bit ignored because computer scientists like love generality, and bridging is the generality. If you can bridge, you can have any computational environment you want, but actually without the layer 2 assumption, you can still get a lot of really interesting stuff just with garbled locks. Imagine like an eCash server, but then when you go to redeem from the wallet, you have to prove reserves, and you have to prove that the requests were made to burn a certain number of shares.
That's really cool.
So there's like a ton of stuff that like I think we've just really like only like scratched the surface on.
Yeah, that's
other
good
than
for
layer 2
for
bridging.
L1 stuff.
Yeah,
that's actually really good. I think partially because the layer 2 stuff introduces like just entire reams of complexity.
Yep.
And so with a primitive like this, it's good for, okay, we can just experiment with it on L1. We don't need to build all this weird ass like bridging and liveness and sequencing and whatever.
Yeah, another example for us for sequencing in particular is we have a staking network, and right now you can only punish for equivocation, but we could make it so that you split your bond between like your normal signing and your I'm not going to sign anything inaccurate. And then if somebody detects that you signed inaccurate, they can burn your money. And signing inaccurate could be like for an arbitrary property between any two like messages that you've signed, which is cool. That's more like Ethereum style staking, where it's really a contract that evaluates if you did a bad staking. It's not like just like, oh, did you leak your private key or not? Right. So it sort of paves the way to like fully generalizable staking. And that's not, even though that is part of building more layer 2s on top of it, sort of turtles all the way down, that contract interaction itself is not a it's not a layer 2. It's just like a primitive that could use this as a new technique.
What are the L1 like wish lists that make garbled locks better? Like if only Bitcoin could do this, then we could do. If only Bitcoin could do X, we could do Y with garbled lock.
Can I rephrase your question? Because I had that question
but
in a slightly different version, which is, okay, so I just want to clarify, like what you're describing all works now.
Yeah.
Right? So, yeah, I guess like kind of what Casey's asking, like what would be the wish list? And then how, I think like one of the problems that people who are trying to build on Bitcoin have is that it's difficult for them to anticipate how or if Bitcoin will ever change in a way that would be more positive for whatever they're trying to build. And so like, I guess, how do you go about building something with the assumption of maybe like the most pessimistic case that like you'll never get your wish list versus your most optimistic case of I'll get everything on my wish list and like everything in between? Because I would imagine those are very different paths to take, right?
Yeah. I think that one thing that I'll say that's just a particularly compelling thing about garbled circuits is the on-chain verification cost is very low, because it's just like checking that you learned the hash for the disproof case. And so I think that that's meaningful and relevant, because even if you had this wish list of like, oh, what if we had like the most cool like zero knowledge proof opcode, it would be more expensive to check that on chain than verifying a hash preimage. So this type of technique actually is sort of like potentially in the direction of like a terminal technique. Like this is not in substitution of something else that we'd much rather do. This might, and there's sort of like a no free lunch thing with like all of these things. Like you need data, or you need, computation. You kind of can't maybe get rid of everything. Maybe you figure it out. But this is definitely like a very, very strong contender for cool technology. That said, like if Bitcoin had like generalized covenants, and if it had like a zero knowledge proof opcode, some of these other things, you would be able to combine this with some of the like last mile, like, okay, well now how do we move the coin based on having received this password? And like that stuff still ends up being like a little bit icky.
Right.
Garbled circuits solve some of it because it's like, oh, well, you put the transaction itself directly into the evidence that you have to provide. And so that kind of is like a covenant of sorts, because it's like, okay, well, it's there, and then it has to be the specific shape of transactions. It's kind of a covenant but it's a covenant with like a punishment assumption of like you have to have some additional money that you wouldn't want to lose.
Right.
Being able to whittle that down just makes these things work even better.
Right.
And I think that that's why, like, in a previous generation, the concern was like, oh, like the Bitcoin chain will get filled with all this like bad computation and junk stuff. And I think that's probably true. But now that we have like garbled circuits and like we have some of these other techniques, I think that there's a good case to be made that because they're so efficient, people will still go for these things. And like the actual on-chain will be like a preimage and then a covenant based on, you know, like what that preimage means and all the computation would happen there. The covenant is just doing the like routing work to like verify or restrict some other property.
Right.
So overall, I do think that like some covenanting would be helpful. A zero knowledge proof opcode would be good. But we maybe can hit escape without it. And because we can hit escape without it, that's also a good reason to just do them. Because you're not keeping the cat in the bag at that point. It's
strategic word.
Oh yeah, sure, not the cat, but like yeah, you're not keeping the cat in the bag. It's like already you're going to have all of these things happen. We've like broken through this technology barrier, and it's just a question of like, well, now is Bitcoin going to be maximally efficient for that use case, or like a little bit less efficient? And then it becomes a question of like, and because of how well things like garbled circuits can scale, it's a question of like, do we want to support 1 billion users or 10 billion users? You know, and I think that that's like I don't know those numbers in particular, but like at that point you say, okay, well, like, you know, clearly we're not in the realm of Bitcoin supports like a couple million people anymore.
Dope. I like it. It's good.
Yeah, it's exciting. And it's not that bad. I mean, to like the core, what is a garbled circuit?
Yeah, it's not that bad. It's not that bad.
It's not like crazy moon math
it's
where it's
something
like, oh,
that I
have
feel
to
like if I read a bit, I could probably understand it.
Yeah.
Some of this shit, I'm like, yeah, there's no hope. I look at like zero knowledge proof systems, and I'm like, yeah, you know, Benedict Boons, like, good luck with that. Like, there's no fucking way.
Yeah, it's also something where I've not like done it, but one thing you can imagine is like writing like A and H of A on some like index cards and like putting them on a table, and like then you could just see how it works.
Right. Yeah.
That would be a craft store Bitcoin How Many podcast
Yeah,
episode.
that's like get
Craft
Lisa
store
to do
Bitcoin
it.
garbled
Yeah.
circuits.
Lisa,
Yeah.
the next garbled circuit, you need to do like a garbled circuit LARP.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'm the one bit. What are you working on?
So I have 2, maybe 3 projects right now, depending on how you count. One is Wyn.fi, WYN.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a new lending platform for
How does it work? Because I want to buy things I want to leverage my Bitcoin up. I want to buy things.
Yeah. So we're decidedly focused not on levering up, although I guess anytime you're taking a loan, you're maybe you can think of that as leverage.
That's always levering up a little bit.
But what we're building is a over collateralized lending at point of sale, and it is on a
like Klarna my burrito with my Bitcoin.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
And this actually ends up being
the hardest money with the most like high time preference service. Like I hold Bitcoin, but I want to eat my Chipotle without paying for it.
Yeah, well, I think that it's actually usable in a couple different ways. So definitely there's like that way. But like the beautiful thing about like Chipotle is like you need to eat it.
That's right.
Like,
I do.
Like you are a forced consumer of Chipotle.
That's right. Nothing else will do.
So I think that like living in, you know, like reality, you have to buy things.
Short food. People are short food.
You're short food.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to eventually like buy
unless you make food, in which case you're long food.
Unless you've like hedged your
Your
long foodness.
If you can make food for yourself, you have to grow it.
Yeah.
You've hedged food. You're net long if you produce more. If you're a farmer, you're long food.
Yeah.
But no, you can be a
But then
farmer
you're
and be
short
short if
fertilizer,
you
you know.
like buy positions
That's right.
to like
Indeed.
yeah. So anyways, but that's why the CFTC exists, to make all this clear for us, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you have to buy stuff. Generally, you'll be trading your Bitcoin for dollars to then use the dollars to buy stuff. Hopefully, you know, maybe at some point Bitcoin economy, but for a lot of reasons, people continue to use dollars. And what we're building is a like sort of like at point of sale ability to lock up additional Bitcoin compared to the purchase price of the item. and then get a fixed repayment term loan for that. And it turns out that across the lending ecosystem, there really aren't products like this. And it is a, maybe pun intended, win-win for both the lender and the buyer, because a lot of the sort of non-term loans, they have like variable interest rates. And then like if you don't pay them off, like eventually that interest really like catches up with you. And if you think about it from the lender point of view, if you have a non-term loan and you want the money back to do something else, like tough luck. Like that person like has the money until they choose to pay it back. You could maybe ratchet up the interest rate or something until it's like unsurvivable. But like if your main way of getting money back is ratcheting up the interest rate on your users, it's like very bad. And then also as a user, if I'm doing a transaction, I just want to know what it is. And a fixed repayment setup is like very easy for me to be like, I bought the burrito, I now owe $2 every 2 weeks. I know exactly what my exposure is on this burrito trade. And so that's what we're building.
So is it sort of like a Klarna like UI kind of thing?
Yeah, it'll be like a checkout flow UI. So you'll see it as like an option. And you can like, check out with Wyn.
And this is specifically for like Bitcoin?
Yeah, so we are building it specifically for Bitcoin. The technology in theory works for like lots of different assets. But I think for both like user base and lender base, obviously if you lend against like Dentacoin or a Grin, you're just gonna be screwed.
Right.
And so we're really trying to be like sensitive and give a like high quality product on either end. So we're really not focused on other tokens, just on Bitcoin and on like stablecoin dollars. And we are building on like an EVM environment. We're not trying to be like purist about it. And the reasoning there is that you were spending these Bitcoin anyways. So if you have some amount of money that you're spending, you would, and your worry is like, oh, like, can my Bitcoin get stolen from me? Is if you just spent them, they would be stolen from you. So it's not really a different pitch to say, put them on this platform. And then
they're stolen versus they're on Ethereum is like basically the same. You know?
If you viewed it as the same,
well, I think I think that is like a big hang up when people talk about, I think a lot of people who are Bitcoiners would like to get a mortgage for their home that's like financed with the loan against Bitcoin. But the idea of then putting large amounts of Bitcoin into some like strange thing that is like untested concerns them. So it's like doing that with a smaller amount. It's like you're more likely to play around with Chipotle burrito money rather than like house money.
And we're targeted at that type of spending primarily, although like we would be able to work. Those are also ones where like the duration is really, really long on a mortgage. So the person providing the capital for that has to have like a very long-term view on the underlying collateral. We're targeting more like short-term activity.
Yeah.
And even if we do long-term in the future, one of the defining things is that it's like a fixed repayment term. Like you have to pay exactly this much. So for a lot of it, what we should be able to actually work in a fully interest-free way, which I think is good for consumers as well, where like you just have to repay. You're buying something $100, and you're not saying, oh, I want this thing for $100, but to finance it is going to be $120. You just get concrete offer, and you meet those repayment terms. And then if we did like larger stuff, like let's say, oh, I want $1 million, then you would maybe have to bake in you have to repay up to this higher threshold, but you get to borrow it for a much longer duration. So we're hopefully by the time this episode's live, we should have a bit more about us out. But
breaking news on How Many Podcasts.
Alpha dropping.
Yeah, if we're not, chastise me.
Right.
But
we're
trying to. I mean, we're gonna go through all the all the steps and motions of like review and audit and etc. But we should have a bit more of an update out about that coming up.
Cool.
Nice.
Awesome.
Well, congratulations. Glad that someone's working on something.
Well, you're also working on something else too.
Yes. So the other baby is the Char network,
Mhm.
which is a Bitcoin staking layer.
Staking it for what? What do you get when you stake it?
Right now,
Just gratitude.
gratitude.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the way that we built it is that we are an extension to Bitcoin Core. So or whatever that repo is called these days. So we have built out a relatively high quality, I would say like C++ proof of stake system.
I
That
think
is
relatively high quality and C++ are a little at odds with each other.
well, you should see it.
Okay, I should C++.
And it is like high performance. It has like a lot of let's say positive like scaling traits. And it's done in like a very like Bitcoiny way. So it should kind of feel like a natural extension of how Bitcoin works. And then it is not using any like trusted third party assumptions whatsoever. Everything is just done using relatively like vanilla Bitcoin. And then what it does is it gives you a new API for Bitcoin that you can basically call and say, for a particular channel, get me the like 10th message, get me the 11th message. And it's a global consensus that you're getting on what that thing is. And you can plug that into any sort of like layer 2 and use that as your mechanism for like forming blocks for a layer 2.
Interesting.
And they come with basically authentication. So you have like a checkable proof that it was like legitimate data from the network that had full consensus. And our hope is that, and this is sort of some of the revision that we'll be doing, is to make it like fully like provable over. So try to optimize how we do our data representations so that these can be used for any project to be able to like do their sequencing. So as an example, like there's all these layer 2s. We want them to be able to say, we're doing a state transition, give us the proofs for what was committed to through this time range, and then use that to do a state transition.
I see. And the thing that staking is doing it here is that if the stakers equivocate about the messages or the message order, they get slashed.
Yeah. So they get economically punished, and
we
that can
seen
be quite a lot of money.
Of like, I mean, Babylon got kind of popular, and like these things like this make a lot of sense because a lot of the problems with proof of stake is that basically that they're not on Bitcoin. Like once you have Bitcoin, once you have a asset where you can be punished outside of the proof of stake system, it solves a lot of the proof of stake systems. Like a lot of the problems with proof of stake, like a lot of the problems with proof of stake comes with the circularity that like, oh, if you're not staking correctly, you get punished with the asset. How do we determine like where the asset is and how much everybody has? Oh, that's done by the proof of stake
it's a bootstrap
algorithm.
problem.
Exactly. Yeah. Whereas if you're on Bitcoin, you're like, well, like Daddy Bitcoin tells us where the Bitcoin is.
Yeah. And then you use that as like this bootstrapping process, and then that gives you a relatively high degree of security that like there's a real punishment that will be meted out if this data is changed.
This like it's like I have a question about this, which is like, kind of like, does anybody care about this, in the sense that it seems like the reason that people create proof of stake systems is because they want it to be cheap, they want it to be fast, and they like don't actually care about security. They want to do enough security theater that like convinces everybody that like it's okay. But if really there's like a small number of stakers that like fully control the system, nobody really gives a shit about that. Like nobody actually cares about the security of proof of stake.
I think that is true to an extent. And the thing that I'd say is that if you look at like what is, for example, a wrapped Bitcoin, is it's actually like held by someone. And if there's a problem in your proof of stake on Ethereum, like they don't have to give you the Bitcoin. They can just be like, this seems bad. With BitVM, the Bitcoin's not really like held by them. They have to do something in response to like provable data. And so I think that the quality of the sequencing and the quality of the state transitions of the underlying layer 2 like tangibly matter. And if it's not unassailable, then it's not adoptable. And right now, a lot of the sequencing is done in a centralized way. So there's like some signer that's running as a service.
Mm-hmm.
But this is a pathway to like a fully decentralized sequencer,
Mm.
which for the layer 2s that will have like the greatest amount of value, you want it to be like maximally backed.
Right.
And part of the strength of a shared sequencing architecture is that there's a finite amount of Bitcoin. And so instead of fragmenting and being like, oh, we'll make our own little group, is you can say, well, we'll use the main one and we'll automatically inherit a large security budget.
How do different stakers get assigned to different like channels? If we think of a different, it does a different. When you say channel, does a different channel correspond to like a different L2 sequence of messages? Do they all share the same messages?
Yeah, it's like a different like message thread.
Mm-hmm.
So you can think of them as like threads.
Yeah.
Like channels. Although I guess like in the chat analogy, channels have threads, something. But it's a different environment. We have a way that you can kind of get like a lighter weight like proof. They're like Merkleized nicely.
Mm-hmm.
And each of these execution environments like is done globally. So there's no real like individual getting assigned, like individual like staker getting assigned to a particular channel.
Mm-hmm.
We do like full global consensus. And we have a leader selection protocol that determines who is supposed to be proposing the next value, like value 105 or something.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a sort of like, there's a lot of stuff we could nerd out on, but like there's a lot of cool algorithms in it. So I made a sampler that has some really like high efficiency ways of querying for leaders,
Mm-hmm.
so that's actually like very fast. And it's fully randomized for every slot. So there's not the problem of like somebody becomes leader and they're leader for a week,
Mm-hmm.
or you have to do some expensive like failover.
Mm-hmm.
It's that we change over every block and every slot.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's a new block, then all the slots get re-randomized.
And does it deal at all with data availability?
So that's an interesting question. In the like base mode of running the protocol, which is what we've implemented now, we don't do any pruning.
Mm-hmm.
So in theory, you could treat this as a data availability layer. But there's no like punishable guarantee of data availability, which is what I think is required for something to be considered a data availability layer. I don't know that there is any data availability layer in existence that actually
Not that I know
makes
of.
that guarantee of like there's a punishment if you don't provide data.
Yeah.
It's very hard to do. There can be things that like sort of get close to it. But like even if you said, oh, we built a data availability layer on top of Bitcoin, and you have to publish this hash preimage by this time or we get the money, but then who's serving you the Bitcoin blocks?
Mm-hmm.
You don't necessarily have somebody giving you the Bitcoin block. So data availability is a really tricky one. You generally have to assume something is working and then you can build one from that.
Mm-hmm.
But for some of these cases, you're assuming like nothing is working.
Yeah.
So that's why it's particularly tricky. Generally, assuming Bitcoin is available, which is an assumption, there's two ways of using our protocol. One is for pre-commitments and the other is for like full running consensus.
Mm-hmm.
For full running consensus, what you would do is you would say, I'm just going to look at Bitcoin to figure out who the stakers are. And then I'm going to contact Char nodes and I'm going to download all the state transitions.
This thing is called Char, by the way. The first
Char.
time we've mentioned the name Char. That's why you're contacting the Char nodes.
Yeah. The Char nodes are like basically a Bitcoin node with some new APIs. And then the other way that you would use it is in, I said the full availability, and then the pre-commits are where you post back proofs of state diffs and like on some frequency, the diff and a proof of it on some frequency onto the main chain. And then you only use Char for the time between that and the next time you post a proof. So if you're posting proofs once a day, the proof that goes onto Bitcoin is the authoritative state of your chain at any given time. And you apply all the diffs, then you have it, and then you just contact Char for after this point in time, what's the next one? And so you can use that with and this is how a lot of the roll-ups work today, is that gives you the benefit of having like bounded staking exposure, but you can use the staking for a lower latency thing than per block. And also you don't have to post per block then, because otherwise like the diffs get smaller the longer they get, proportionately smaller. They do more stuff, but it's less. It will be more data. So as an example, like let's say that there's you have a system and there's a million different counter variables, and then you have an increment function that you can call. Obviously, if you go over more time randomly, you're going to be touching more variables. But then if you touch the same one multiple times, the diff will only have to have one went from 5 to went to 100 proof rather than a proof of every single transition. So generally, the longer you wait, the less data you have to post proportionally. So there's an incentive to wait, but then also maybe the less secure you are, given that you're relying on the staking network. And our goal is to be as secure as possible to let people like minimize how frequently they have to post data. Right now, for full security, you'd be posting every single block. But even if you're posting every single block, that's an unpredictable 10 minutes. So we can guarantee much less latency such that you can finalize where you know the punishment in that time period is people losing bonded Bitcoin staked by Char.
Cool. And how do you make money off of this?
So I guess there's like two questions. One is as a company, and the other is like as a staker. And right now we are like purely focused on just making the best staking. I think that what we've seen in the development from the Ethereum ecosystem is that there are like really big incentives to be involved in sequencing. So it should be a like self-incentivized behavior. I think in the longer run, if we're seeing that that's insufficient, or if the presence of like MEV, basically, it would be another term for like incentivized staking. If the presence of MEV is bad for the protocols, then we'd look at like introducing a token incentive. But our goal with that is to make like a closed loop, because I think a lot of the tokens are open loop, meaning that like at some point there's like a pile of tokens that just starts growing for someone. Closed loop means like, you know, maybe you are getting a token, but that's giving you a right to put data in, and then you have to do it and burn it. So that becomes closed loop.
Right.
And you create like a more, I think the way to think of it is that it's not like a, like, you know, I think that there's, you know, runes and, you know, yay tokens.
Yay.
But I think that it's more like you need a spectrum allocation. Like if you think about like radios, like you need a spectrum allocation, and somebody has to be determining like where that bandwidth is allocated. And that's why it's actually a, like you can make the argument of like, oh, well, this thing should just be priced in Bitcoin, just pay Bitcoin to get the thing. But actually it's like a different thing. What you want to do is you want to mint, if there is a token, you want to mint the token at the rate that data is actually available. So that you're connecting it back to the fundamental resource, and then it's a marker for the resource, which is bandwidth in the protocol, which is a distinct asset from Bitcoin. So it only really makes sense to have a token if there's legitimately a distinct asset. Otherwise, it doesn't really make sense. And it only really makes sense to do a token if it's improving the quality of service of the protocol. So I think that we probably will like see that it's worth doing. But I don't think that, at least in terms of engineering design, the incentivization of a network, to me, like it makes no sense to connect that to the fundamental operability of the network. It's almost as if like you were inventing radio waves, and before you like got walkie-talkies working, you said, well, we got to have a central governing body to figure out who gets to use the walkie-talkies when. It's like make the fucking walkie-talkies first, and then figure out like, oh, okay, there's interference, and you know, how do we make it fair so that things are prioritized correctly? So that's our approach to like incentives, is that incentives, we are creating a new resource, but first we're going to create the resource, and then we're going to worry about the like monetization of that resource. And if we can get away with it being a pure Bitcoin, no token feedback loop, that's great. We'll do that. And then in terms of for us, you know, maybe we'll participate as stakers or provide services.
Right. Cool. Very cool.
Yeah, very cool. Honestly, I feel like this has been a pretty big update since like our last year's episode.
Oh yeah, there's maybe a little bit more. It's the third mystery project.
What's that?
Well, I know that this is probably what like you're thinking. Oh, you know, half the listeners want to nerd out about something, and then half the listeners, you know, want to get like an astrology update.
Right.
But really, probably for this episode, like 99% of the listeners are like, what's going on with like Labitbu?
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So we do actually have like a V2 of the Labitbu protocol.
Okay.
And it is more or less like releasable. We've just been like really busy.
What are
with,
the
like, a bunch of other
benefits
stuff.
of the new Labitbu protocol?
So, so first of all, I'll say, I've been working with Stu a lot on it, and he's been doing, most of the, engineering work.
Mhm.
And you guys should absolutely have him on sometime.
Mhm.
He's fun. But the benefits are that all of the like data is encrypted. So at least in terms of Bitcoin,
Don't you want people to be able to see your Labitbus?
Yes. But it's encrypted in a way that's still indexable. It's encrypted such that you have to run like a SATS index, basically, in order to be able to.
Oh, interesting.
Not like a full history SATS index, just like a present.
I mean, the history stats index, you can't. That's you can't.
Crazy.
Yeah, in the first version of Word, I tried to do that, and I was running it, and it just kept going and consuming more and more data, and I was like, no, this is never going to work.
But
so you need there's some sort of like hash which is derived from the state of all sats at a given time. Why? Like, why do you want this?
Well,
like,
so I mean,
so Rube Goldberg.
It is one
Jeremy Rubin Goldberg.
Rubin Goldberg.
We figured it all out.
Yeah,
it's
fun. Two is that one of the concerns that we've heard from the community is that like distributing content puts you at like risk and having that content on your nodes, and this is a format where if you don't run the indexer, your node won't have in plain text any of this content,
right?
Which is, I think, beneficial. And then the other thing,
I mean, couldn't you just make it like you just like concatenate all the block hashes in a weird way, and a normal full node also wouldn't have this data?
Well, no,
instead of this like absolutely ridiculous protocol that I wrote that generates like gigs and gigs and gigs of state.
Yeah, but the thing is that we wanted them not to be filterable without significant investment.
Right.
And then the significant investment is that you have to run ordinals.
Yeah, it's like pick your poison. You can filter them.
That's beautiful.
But you have to be a shit pointer. Yeah.
Yep. Or you have to do something even more crazy, like zero knowledge proofs that this doesn't contain.
That's a really nice trolley problem.
I mean, it's good.
And
then
we also designed it such that in order to decrypt them, you end up having to have the full unencrypted contents in memory. So that you can't just filter them cheaply. Like you have to choose either like I'm going to know about this content or I'm not going to know about it.
Right. I mean, I guess it's good. I am a little bit worried that like, I mean, listen, the SAT indexing is like pretty slow. It's getting slower by the minute. It's getting slower by the 10 minutes. You're really hitching this protocol's horse to this like very, algorithmically, expensive process.
But I think it's incentivized.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully the Labitbu fans will submit useful patches to ORD and ReDB to improve the speed of SAT indexing.
Yeah, and I believe also one of the things that we've done is, and this was inspired by a tweet of yours. I believe it's implemented. I'll have to double check. Maybe you'll cut this if I'm wrong.
What did I tweet?
But you tweeted that your biggest regret in ordinals is that you wanted them to all spawn from like one transaction.
Right. Yeah.
I think we've implemented that logic such that they all have, and that's sort of hence the name pathologies, is there's a path through the transaction graph where all of these sort of are generated.
Yeah, I do think that would have been cool if ordinals had launched with parent-child, and the only inscription that could exist without a parent would be inscription 0. And you would have to get a child another inscription to start making inscriptions off of that.
Yeah.
So that they would all be, together in this like giant tree.
So do you have to have a Labitbu in order to?
Yeah. So I think we have a couple.
Are you breeding the Labitbus? Is it a breeding mechanic?
I'll have to send you the protocol.
Do you have to get a stud Labitbu?
But yeah, we I believe we have like sort of like a like initial set, and then they're sort of like addressable in accordance with these. The main place we got kind of stuck is that we didn't know like the best way to like really like launch it. But maybe we'll just make it like open, and then like people can like check on it, and then we'll have like a block height where it's like usable.
Cool.
And then
I'm
we
excited.
can figure out
I'm a Labitbu holder, so
I welcome other ordinals based protocols.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's fun, and I think it also showed me working on this project a bit. It's just like how like fun the the Metaprotocols degens are. Like they're a lot of fun.
Yeah. You can really go crazy. You can just make up whatever bullshit you want.
And they're like,
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I'm warming up to bitmaps, by the way. Like I tweeted, I quote tweeted a bitmap tweet and said I'm warming up to bitmaps. I mean, just they're still going. They've got 3D, castles of blocks and shit. It's like on-chain schizophrenia.
Yeah.
Well, we were talking earlier about how like ordinals is getting better as the number goes down.
Yeah, as the number goes down, the people who are interested in make money,
and
it's
only
just
have
the
nerds.
bitmap people who are like,
and
bro,
that's
look
what
at
I was
my
gonna say
bitmap
is the
city.
bitmap people will always be there.
Right.
They're not going anywhere.
They're not going anywhere. Yeah, the Labitbu people, like, I mean, that's a money sink. Nobody's making money.
Yeah, if somebody is like a passionate, person on this, like, we definitely would maybe like take some volunteering or contribution on it. It's been hard because I sort of breathe down my engineers back and say we have to make the Char network a thing, and so no more Labitbus. But I think we definitely
Stu is torn between working on the Char network and
it's torn between two worlds,
between your like Bitcoin Klarna burrito and like more Labitbus.
That's the world, man.
He's fully on. It's two completely separate companies, so he's fully on Char.
Got it. Char
and Labitbu. But yeah, I think we want to launch it because we like spent a good amount of time building it out. It's just figuring out an exact launch is not really. Well, if you're familiar with like Labitbu, obviously it's not like our strong suit of launching NFT collections.
Right. Should we go to the review and predictions?
We should. I mean, really the most important thing. So, okay, we do this episode at the end of every year. It's our third year doing this. And Jeremy's predictions for 2025 last year in December 2024 were surprisingly prescient, or maybe not surprisingly. You've been around the block a couple times. But I mean, I think our review for 2024 was basically like there's more appetite for things like CTV than there was prior. I feel like in 2025 we've sort of seen like a weird, like things have just gotten distracted away from that conversation. So I think, I mean, provide your own thoughts, but I feel like in terms of like a review of where that's been at over the last year, it's like decreased from 2024. Do you agree with that? Like,
yeah, I think that with the like sort of explosion of like two phenomenon, one of like BitVM and then the filter boys, I think a lot of the Covenants stuff has become a little bit more like wait and see.
Yeah.
I also think this year we've had another cycle of like, Jeremy is dumb and bad, and like obviously if you wanted to get this done, you would do it this other way. And like, I think while true that I am dumb and bad, not true, maybe you would do it another way and it would just like all work out in your favor.
Yeah, this is what people kind of come back to is they're like, Jeremy is stupid, like surely we can do this in a better, more elegant way.
Yeah.
And then after like a whole year of them trying, they're like, well, okay, maybe he like,
they're like, Jeremy is stupid, but we can't do this better.
And I just kind of like always, when it comes up, I like give the, like, well, here's the like reasons why those trade-offs that you've like chosen that are a little bit different, like are trade-offs. It's not like no free lunch. And then, I think people like just sort of are quiet for a long time. And then, we'll see if something ever happens. This one, like the big thing was like they made a new CTV.
The part of the Great Script Restoration.
Yeah. But it's sort of like if you are a spam filters, person, it's sort of like worse for spam. And then because it commits to the annex, which is like this other field there's a dick butt in the annex,
that's right,
and there is,
there is,
and then the other reason is that it also disabled one of the like quirks of CTV that was like really useful for BitVM. So like the BitVM people are like not useful for us, and I think that they were hoping that it would be people disliked BitVM enough that they would be like, oh, it doesn't help BitVM, it's good. But then it like helped the spam, and that was the same group of people.
Right.
So, and they care more about the spam than they care about the BitVM.
Yeah.
So I think that a lot of the like filtering people would be like very willing to contend that like roll-ups are good. because it's financial transactions.
Right.
Those matter.
Well, I mean, it depends on what you're rolling up.
Yeah.
You can roll up a lot of shit.
Rolling
in
up
one
at
burrito,
Labitbu's,
you know?
just
Yeah.
Labitbu
But
after
but it
Labitbu.
can be used for financial
Yeah.
transactions, which can be good. But like spam is just spam.
Deplorable. Yeah.
I mean, I think really the hope of the Great Script Restoration version of OpsCTV is that it just kind of gets ignored. It just kind of gets, there's like enough enthusiasm for the Great Script Restoration that it just is like we kind of get CTV by accident alongside it.
Yeah, and I'm like, honestly, I'm okay with any, like, I think
You've always been like, I just want the covenants. I
just want to be able to use
I don't
the
care
tool.
who gives me the covenants. Like, just let me make the covenants.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm pro, Great Script Restoration if it can happen. It seems like there's some new energy on it, but I haven't seen any new results. So, or simplicity. Maybe now we're starting to hear about simplicity again.
The simplicity is like kind of rumbling. You know what I mean? I finally got an answer to my question of how do you add new jets to simplicity, and the answer is you just have a new Taproot script version, and that's just the way you do it. So you do need
soft forks.
You do need a soft fork and new jets. But they're like sort of understood, I guess. I can't decide how I feel about jets. Like being like, okay, we're gonna just have all this code and we're gonna assume that it's equivalent. Like that's kind of like, I don't know. But
Quick poll: jumbo jets or jacuzzi jets?
Jumbo jets for sure.
Jumbo jets.
Jumbo jets. Yeah. Jacuzzi jets are, I don't know.
Yeah.
I got nothing.
Actually, I didn't know when you said
Yeah. I mean, jumbo jets, that's just very exciting. I mean, jumbo jets. Jacuzzi jets are like,
okay, so Blockstream for some free future marketing material of when you have like a big upgrade, it's going to be jumbo jets.
Not jacuzzi jets.
Not
jacuzzi jets get a little gross after a while.
Yeah, they're pointing to sensitive areas.
You're going to get Legionnaire's disease from that eventually.
That's right. Yeah.
I mean, your other prediction for 2025, which is like you were shockingly on the money yet again. Maybe Jason can like put in a clip of you giving your like price prediction.
Yeah,
so
right. Yeah, I guess price prediction. Like I don't know. I'm kind of digging the 96K gang. I think we might be 96K.
You're saying 96K again. Right. Yeah. Just right here. Just a pause. Basically, when we recorded last time, I want to say it was a day or two after we hit 100K for the first time. So that was like December 2024. I remember it was when we were in Miami last year. We were out, it was at night, and we hit 100K. And I was like, it's the super cycle, baby. We've made it. It's incredible. And then the next day or two after we recorded with you, and of course we're on a high, and we asked like, all right, Jeremy, where are we going to be a year from now? And the answer that you gave was 96K. And I think today we're sitting at 93K. So you really, you got it right. And literally you even said in the clip, like, we're going to get a little bit of hype from the treasury companies. We're going to go up a bit, but we're going to go back down, and we're going to be like where we are right now / a little lower. So obviously we have to know where are we going to be at next year for the 4th annual Rubin review.
Yeah. It's like Groundhog's Day. Yeah. I mean, I think, one, it's weighing on me heavily that I may be causal. That maybe this is the most
right. You didn't predict the price. You caused the price. So you got to go high.
It's a big responsibility.
Yeah,
it is. I think that my gut is telling me that like above like 50, we're still overpriced.
Above 50K.
Yeah. And
so this is bad.
Just like personally, like, 85 happened, like it was an 85 yesterday or something.
Yeah. It was recently. Yeah.
And I wasn't like, oh, time to like, hit the dry powder and like load up.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, at least like, spiritually seems like tending to like, there'll be buying opportunities yet. But I don't think that, in terms of like the upside, just like with a vague feeling, I don't think that there's really anything that's creating really strong upward pressure or information happening right now, and I don't see that happening in the next year. The biggest thing is there's going to be a new.
I don't like where this is going.
Yeah,
a new lending company.
Yeah, new lending company.
But but yeah. So I am not. Obviously I'm like bullish on Bitcoin, but I think this year, people harvested last year, the crops of some narratives that were built up over a very long time, and the yield.
ETF narratives, the
Yeah.
institutional
institutions are
adoption
here. They're
narratives.
gonna
Those
buy
were
our
like
back.
10
The
year
pension narratives.
narrative.
Yeah, we had
Yeah,
really been.
the
Those
banks
were
are here. The
we were
government's here,
tending
yeah.
those memes for a long time.
Yeah. So I
The
guess
humble meme gardeners.
I guess what
Yeah.
I would, if I had to make a prediction, is that like we might find a new low, and then like some of these forces,
But out of the darkness comes the light, right, Jeremy?
they're just like a little bit more like glacial. It's a strong DC signal, and there's an accumulation that happens, and I don't know that these positions unwind over time. And they may also, because they don't unwind, these are coins that like get taken off the table for quite a long time. So, the sort of red herring would be like,
really just kind of
Yeah,
going
God.
back and forth here, like where are we landing?
Yeah.
Jeremy?
It's an emotional roller coaster.
yeah. I mean, I think that like the high that we'll see this cycle is probably
This year. We're not talking about this
Yeah,
cycle.
just
this year is probably we'll see 134.5.
Fuck, that's not great, dude. That's not great.
And
34.5.
I think that
Fuck, bro.
we'll probably see that for like a couple weeks.
Okay.
All right, well, you
That's
can time the
my-
Pico top.
Yeah.
That's just my like gut check. I would love to be wrong. Especially
What about the low?
Huh?
What about the low?
of
Next
like
year's
the
low?
pure low.
Yeah. The Pico bottom.
I think that like probably I'm gonna go with like the 58K gang.
No.
And
Man.
That's poverty.
for that, I think that will, for me probably be like a buying point in time. Like I'll probably be like, all right, time to load up.
Yeah.
There definitely will be like probably a little bit more pain from there, but like you don't want to like, miss it. But I don't think we're gonna go lower than 50. So that's, if I had to make a price prediction, that's it.
Right?
Give us a number for December of next year since we had the 96.
Oh, December of next year.
Yeah. Just so we have it, We
I
got your
think-
high, we got your low.
I think that like I am seeing that will be like at like 112.
Okay.
Okay. Just a little,
Yeah.
all right. Okay. Although, Jesus Christ, December of next year, we're at 112. I'm going to be like,
Yeah. Well, I mean, like,
just like do over. Like, what was the point of any of it?
I mean, like, if you were working in like a traditional hedge fund and we're getting 20%,
You'd be happy about
be
that.
happy.
That's true. That's
So,
true.
I think that people expect, and I guess that this is the thing, is like people remember the crypto of the past. And like the reality is, and this is like the same thing that I've been observing earlier on in the episode, because I'm sure people have just like tuned in just for the prediction,
Right,
given
they're
how
just-
on
yeah.
I was last year. But is that if we don't invest in technology, we become more like the old system.
Yeah.
So to the extent that we become more like the old system, there's not fundamental growth.
Mm-hmm.
So the growth will be more of a background rate, albeit we're still growing
Mm-hmm.
and we're still doing something new and novel, but we'll get more towards a slow and steady traditional growth rate. Even if it's, beating the market, beating the best performing hedge funds,
Mm-hmm.
it's not going to be like absurd that you didn't allocate all of your money into this
Right.
thing.
Yeah.
Well, let that be, words of encouragement maybe for the people out there that you got to work for your bags. And that doesn't mean tweet every day, about number go up. That means make the technology
If
better.
everyone, this
We
is
need
sort
to
of like,
cultivate some new memes that we can cash in later.
well, like,
Okay,
like
see,
this is
that's-
this is going to be the meme. So this is like a Tinkerbell thing. It's like a clap if you believe. But everyone out there in the audience, no more Twitter on the weekends,
Mm-hmm.
or like minimize it, and do real stuff. No more Twitter on Wednesdays. So I'm instituting a
Well,
Sabbath
except if
of-
you're
of
tuning into
Twitter
the How Many Podcast
for
Twitter space.
for
Right.
the weekend
Yep.
and for Wednesdays.
Mm-hmm.
And on the weekend, spend time with your families.
Mm-hmm.
On Wednesdays, work really hard. Work
Mhm.
for
Mhm.
Wednesdays.
I see. Uh-huh.
And that will be where all of the growth for the next year is coming from, is from the work people are doing on Wednesdays.
Mm. Okay. All right.
I think it's really good.
Yeah.
Except that Wednesday you should be watching Hell Money.
Yeah.
So
Oh, is Wednesday your usual drop
it's
date?
Hump
HMP
Day,
day, yeah.
HMP Day.
After your work, then you can watch Hell Money as a treat.
Well, but they
you
have
know?
to tune into the subspace
They have
in
to
the
tune
middle
into
of the
subspace.
day.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay.
Listen, every other Wednesday, watch it after work, and then on the subspace Wednesday,
I mean, it
little
could be
break
Tuesday.
after lunch,
Tuesday could be the day that you
Yeah.
work.
Yeah.
Yeah, or you guys are just gonna have to find a new day.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah,
you
you'll
know,
see as I'm manifesting out there that everyone's going to do no Twitter Wednesdays.
Mm-hmm.
Like the universe will adopt.
Right.
Will find its way to match the vibe.
Yeah, and
of
if How
the
Many
current
Podcast goes
zeitgeist.
down, you can blame Jeremy.
Uh-huh.
Like
Yeah.
that's fair.
Subscriber count up. That's my other prediction.
Oh,
Right, there we go.
Hell yeah. in the black.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you, Jeremy. This has been a really lovely.
Thank you for having me on. This is
Yeah.
always a big joy.
Highlight
mine.
of the
Yeah, it's
year.
a big highlight. I'll shout out my mom. She loves watching these guys. She says this is the best one that she watches.
Oh,
Oh
excellent.
my
There you go.
gosh.
Yeah, awesome.
Well, thanks.
Shout out Jeremy's mom.
Yeah, thanks, Jeremy's mom.
Yeah.
We really appreciate it.
Yeah, on Wednesdays, call your mother.
Absolutely.
That's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah,
there you
That's
go.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good for number go up.
Yep.
All right. Well, we'll see you guys next time,
All right.
and we'll see you next year.
Bye.